How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to Social Media Marketing School. For those of you that are new here, I am your host, Ethan Bridge, and I just want to start off by saying thank you all for tuning in. Now, today actually marks episode 50 of the podcast, and I wanted to do something quite big for episode 50. So here it is. I have introduced a video version of the podcast. Now, if you are stumbling across the video version of the podcast and you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, you might be thinking, what on earth is this guy talking about? This is his first YouTube video and he's talking about 50 episodes of a podcast. Now, that is completely understandable. If you are tuning in on the video side, I do have 50 more episodes you can go and listen to of the podcast. Just head to the link in the description and you will see them there. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I post every single day. Facebook ads, Instagram growth, you name it. Anything to do with social media marketing, that is what I speak about on this podcast. But episode 50, welcome to video. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google, you name it, head over to YouTube and you will now be able to find a video version of the podcast. Now, the place to be is still going to be on Apple, Spotify, or Google because the video versions of the podcast will release a few days later. So if you want to gain this knowledge sooner, make sure you are still subscribing on Apple, on Google, on Spotify, because that is where you will find the episodes first. But here is video. Welcome to a video version of the podcast. Now, today's episode is going to be about Facebook custom audiences. Look at it this way. On Facebook, there are 2.6 billion active monthly users, and on Instagram, there are 1 billion active monthly users. Now, this just goes to show how important these two platforms should be as an advertiser. You need to be making the most of Instagram and Facebook ads. Now, you would know this, I've spoken about this tons and tons of times in the rest of my podcast episodes, but one thing I haven't spoken about is your custom audiences. And custom audiences are a great way to make your ads more profitable. This is because Facebook custom audiences offer some of the best targeting for your ads. What they are is they are essentially just highly defined groups of people who already have a relationship with your business. So they're technically already a warm audience. They are likely to be profitable because they know about who you are and what you do already. So these can be people such as past customers, followers on a social media page, people that have downloaded your app, you name it. Any sort of person that has had some interaction with your brand in the past. But before I can teach you actually how to use custom audiences, you need to understand about the different types of custom audiences Facebook has to offer on their Ads Manager platform. Because if you don't know what types they have to offer, you can't make them accordingly. Now, the first type of custom audience is a custom audience based on your customer list. So now you might be thinking, okay, look, I have a Facebook Pixel installed, so surely the Facebook Pixel is going to know about my current customers or people that I've converted in the past. But by using a customer list, you are actually able to tell the Facebook Ads Manager about people that the Facebook Pixel isn't able to track. Now, this might be because you hadn't previously had a Facebook Pixel installed, or you might be getting customers that are outside of your Facebook ads themselves, any sort of thing along those lines. You are actually able to upload information with regards to these people so that you can then implement them into your Facebook ad strategy. Now, don't worry, this is all GDPR compliant. For those of you that are all business savvy, GDPR is something you obviously have to be very, very careful with when you're doing Facebook ads and uploading custom audiences. Because you have to be aware that the people that you are uploading into your custom audience on Facebook must be people that have given you permission to do so. If they haven't given you permission to do so, you cannot do it. That is not GDPR compliant. That is not good for your business. You can be fined for doing so. So make sure they are only people that have given you the option to do so. Now, you need to remember also that people may have given you permission, but then they unsubscribe from this list. You need to remember, you're not only taking them away from an email list, you name it, something along those lines, you need to also take them out of your custom audience on Facebook, because you cannot remarket to these people through custom audiences on Facebook if they take away that permission for you to do so. These are all things you have to be aware of. Facebook ads aren't easy. They can be extremely confusing. You need to be aware of all of these things before you just go headfirst into doing them. This is also something that customers can also pick you up on, because customers can see companies that are actually targeting them with Facebook ads through custom audiences. You can actually go into your Facebook settings. And if you have seen that these people have unsubscribed from the permission list, but they then go into their settings and see that you are still targeting them, they can use that against you and come back to you and say, look, this is not good, I want to potentially sue you, I've taken away your permission, but you're still doing so, this, that, and the other. So be aware that people can still see that you are targeting them, even though they have taken away the permission to do so. And it's as simple as them clicking settings and then clicking a button called advertisers that I've interacted with, and then there's just a list of companies. That's how they see it. So if you weren't aware of that, now you are, so be aware. So that was custom audiences through a customer list. Now the next one we're going to talk about is custom audiences from your website. Now this one's pretty simple. This one is just people that have interacted with your website in the past, but you're only going to be able to know about these people if you have the Facebook Pixel installed. If you are using Facebook ads and you do not have a Facebook Pixel installed on your website, you are missing out on so much data. And you might be thinking, who on earth would use Facebook ads but not have a Pixel installed? Trust me, I've seen it before multiple times. These people are throwing away so much potential money because they aren't collecting any data. In my opinion, the data is equally, if not more important, than the conversions you are getting from your ads in the first place, because there are things that you can use long term, adapt your current ads with to then go and convert more customers. So you need to be getting this data from your ads. So if you haven't got the Facebook Pixel installed on your website, get it done now. If you have had someone create your website for you, just contact the developer. They'll be able to do it like that. Trust me, they'll know what they are doing. Or if you're using Shopify or WordPress, there's just a simple box that you fill in with your Facebook Pixel number, and then it puts the pixel on your website. But you need to be using this Facebook Pixel if you want to be able to create a custom audience from your website traffic. So you can create these custom audiences to retarget people who have visited even specific pages of your website, or they've reached the checkout page but haven't actually purchased your product, or people that have added things to basket, you name it. These are the people you can target through creating custom audiences through your website traffic. The next one is you can actually create a custom audience through your app users. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with apps and Facebook ads in general, this point may sound like complete gibberish, so I do apologize, but for those of you that are aware, I will quickly run through this one and what it's about. So after you actually set up your app and register the SDK on the Facebook developers site, you can actually then create custom audiences for people that have interacted with your app. Now, this type of custom audience is great for targeting a warm audience or for encouraging engagement elsewhere, because people that have interacted with your app, they clearly know about who you are and interested in what you do. You may be a clothing brand that has an app as well, ASOS for example. Now that's quite a big example, but you get my point. People aren't directly just ordering off your website. You may have an app through which people can order from as well. So an app is just another way to retarget a warm audience through Facebook ads. So that's actually another type of custom audience you can use. Now, the final type is quite a simple one. It's simply an engagement custom audience. So you can actually create a custom audience through people that have interacted with your Facebook page, your Instagram page, they follow you on a social media page, you name it, any type of thing along those lines, you can put those people in a custom audience because that is captured by your page itself or the Facebook pixel. So now you know about the different types of custom audiences. I'm now going to go into a little bit more detail on how you can actually start using them and creating them. So the first point is pretty simple. To create a custom audience, obviously you're going to have to open up Facebook Ads Manager. And then once you're on that page, click Create Custom Audience. Wow, who would have guessed that? But from here, the process depends on which type of campaign you want to create. So this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So firstly, I'm going to teach you how to create a custom audience through a customer list. Now, this one is something that you can do through two different ways, so I'll run you through both. So once you have clicked Create Customer Audience, click Customer File. This will then give you the opportunity to add customer information or import from MailChimp. So if you're using MailChimp on your Shopify or WordPress store, it is really, really good that you can then just directly import your customer information straight from MailChimp. It saves a lot of time. So if you are using Shopify or WordPress, I would encourage you to use MailChimp as your email marketing app. But since a lot of people don't use MailChimp, I know for many reasons why a lot of people wouldn't, you can actually just import customer data through an Excel spreadsheet or just inputting simple text. But before you can actually go about importing your customer information, you need to accept all the terms and conditions, all of that boring stuff. But it is important because, as I mentioned earlier, you do have to be GDPR compliant. All of that stuff is quite important nowadays. Customer information is a very, very sensitive thing. So I would encourage you to actually read these terms and conditions. Not many people do read terms and conditions, but these are some quite important ones to read. So have a quick flick through them just to make sure you're compliant and you are following them. Boring, I know. That's probably not what you wanted to hear from this episode, but I do encourage it. So now you can actually prepare your customer list, and you should follow Facebook's best formatting practices. This is another boring thing that it tells you about to get the most matches, but I will summarize the key points from it here just to save you some time. So number one, please make sure you are keeping separate columns for first names and last names. Very simple, don't forget it. First names and last names need to be separate. Step number two, make sure you are including country codes for your phone numbers. So I'm from the UK, country code here is 44, or if you're from America or Canada, country code 1. Something as simple as that, but make sure you are using those when you are importing your mobile numbers, because, for example, here in the UK, direct numbers would just be 07, something, whatever, rest of the number. But because that isn't the same everywhere, you need to make sure you are using the country code. So 447, blah, blah, blah. You get it. So make sure you are using country codes when importing mobile numbers. And then step number 3, make sure you are always using a country column for your customers. Even if all of your customers are from the US, for example, still have a column for this to show that people are from a certain country. It just helps with the matches down the line, and you will get a more profitable campaign as a result. So now that you've done all of that exciting stuff, you can upload your customer file in either a CSV format or TXT. Or you can simply just copy and paste it into the box provided. Then just give your audience a name that you're going to be able to easily remember. So if it's a customer audience from the past year customer audience, something as simple as that, something you can remember and refer back to easily. Finally, click Next, wait, you're done. There is your custom audience. So moving on to the next custom audience. How do you create a custom audience from your website visitors? So firstly, you are going to click website traffic, and then you are going to select the pixel you want to use. As I mentioned, you need to have a pixel for this. Otherwise, Facebook can't find all that data. So please, 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 if you haven't already, install that goddamn Facebook pixel. You will not regret it. It doesn't cost you anything. Just get it installed. And then within the next step, you need to choose the people who you want to target. So you can target the people that were visitors within the past 30 days, between the past 30 and 180, or you can just go up to however long you wanted to go to. But obviously, if you want to target the people that are most warm or the people that have interacted with your brand most recently, you want to do people that have interacted within the past 30 days. It's fresh in their mind when they see the ad. It won't just be complete confusion when they see it, because they'll be like, okay, that's something I looked at the other day. I remember going on their website. They're now retargeting me. It's not like, who on earth are these people? I don't think I've ever seen these people because they visited your website 6 months ago, let's say. So if you want to make the most of this custom audience, obviously target people that have visited most recently. That is where you are most likely to see the highest conversion rate, but by all means you can test targeting as far back as you want to. Then it's as simple as just giving your audience a name and then clicking create audience. It is a much easier custom audience to set up, but again, if it's people that have visited your website recently, then it is likely that this is going to be quite a profitable campaign because they have already shown interest in your brand or product or service. Now, you can create a custom audience for an app, but that one is quite confusing, so I might make a separate video or a separate podcast about that one because I don't want to just completely drown you with gibberish in this episode. So I'm going to leave that one out of this episode, but just be aware if you do have an app, you can obviously create a custom audience because I did mention that as a custom audience type earlier, but this one is a bit more confusing, so I am going to leave that one for a later date, but stay tuned if you want that one, or just reach out to me on Instagram because I can just tell you in person on there how to do it. So then finally we have the engagement custom audience, and to create your engagement custom audience, again, this one isn't too difficult. So obviously you're going to click the engagement option after you've selected create custom audience. So once you've actually clicked on engagement, another pop-up is going to show up, and it's going to ask you whether you want to create a custom audience from people that have recently engaged with your videos, your lead forms, your Facebook page, your Instagram business profile, your events, or people that have clicked through on one of your previous carousel Facebook ads. So obviously then from this, depending on which one you can click, you get sent down a different pathway of how you want to create the custom audience. So for video, for example, you can then create a custom audience depending on how long people actually watched that video for. So obviously the warmest audience of people is going to be people that have watched it for 90% of the time or above. That shows that they have shown great interest in the video. From the lead form option, you can either select people that have either completed and submitted the form, or you can just select people that have opened it. So you might be retargeting people who have completed the form, and depending on how they completed it, you can send them an ad on a certain product, or you might still want to retarget the people who have not completed the form, who have just opened it, because you want them to then complete the form. So then with a later ad, you can target them accordingly. And then for your Facebook profile or Instagram profile, you can then select a custom audience based on how people have interacted with both. So whether they've liked it, commented on it, sent you a message, you name it, any of those, you can create a custom audience depending on how people have interacted with that profile. So that is how you actually create your custom audiences. You've created them now, but now you can use them when actually creating your ads. So this is where they're actually put into use. So you're going to go about creating your ad in the same way as you normally do, but then you're just going to simply tell your ad to target your custom audience, opposed to then creating a targeting audience through the ad creation itself, because you've already got an audience created. So you're going to use that custom audience as your target audience. That is how you use them. It's simple as that. And then you go about the rest of the ad creation as you normally would. But just because you've created this incredible custom audience, it doesn't then mean that your ad is going to be profitable. You still need to split test, you still need to try alternative creatives, alternative headlines, alternative call to actions, you name it. Just because you've got a good custom audience doesn't mean your ad is then going to be profitable. So you still need to go about the rest of your campaign creation the same as you would normally do in order to find the optimum profitable campaign. So there you have it. That is how you create custom audiences on Facebook ads. I do hope this was an interesting episode. I know it's a little bit more complicated, but I did enjoy recording it for you. Custom audiences are phenomenal. I have been using them for a long time. You definitely should implement them into your strategy because they're an audience you want to target. You know who you want to target once you've collected data. So you can then really hone in on those customers through custom audiences. But that does round up today's episode of the podcast. If you've got any questions with regards to anything I've mentioned in the episode, please just reach out to me on Instagram at @themarketingethan. Send me a DM and I'll make sure I get back to you no matter what. Now, as I mentioned, episode 50, there is a video version of the podcast now. If you're watching the video version, thank you. If you are listening on Apple, Google or Spotify, you name it, head down to the show notes where I would have left a link to the YouTube channel where you can now start finding video versions of the podcast. But if you are listening and you did enjoy today's episode, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, depending on what platform you are on. That way you will never miss an episode when I post every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. But just one more ask from me, guys. If you are listening on Apple, please head over to the show page, scroll to the bottom and leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review. If you do, please send me a screenshot of your review. Send it to me on Instagram, and I'll give you a shout out at the beginning of the next episode of the podcast. And I will also give you a shout out on my Instagram story just as a little thank you. But I just want to finish off by saying thank you all for tuning in to Social Media Marketing School.